It's that time, ladies and gentlemen. Another day, another set of strips to make for Switchblade Shorties, which is going to be my forthcoming work for 2024. The plan is to serialize it online using all possible vectors: Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, Line Webtoon, and Cartoonist Kayfabe. Every week I have it in my mind to snip these images, create a kind of video package reading the previous week's worth of strips. So we'll see how that goes. I thank you guys so much for the past couple of days hanging out with me while I do these streams. I'll do the streams fairly often whenever it's kind of like, I don't want to say expositional for the comic, but there's some cool stuff I just don't want to give away. So I'm going to keep those strips private until the cat's out of the bag. Then when the cat's out of the bag, it doesn't matter. But there's just some cool stuff going on in the comic that I sort of want it to be a surprise. But before we get busy, I thought it might be cool to, I always show off the stacks on the Kayfabe weeklies and stuff. But like, what if we just kind of give it a quick... As you can see, it's pretty rigorous stuff, man. We're at nearly 100 pages. This page, I believe, is 96 that I'll be working on today. So let me just put this stack in a safe place, and then fuck it, man, we'll get started. 1 second. Okay, so for the people in the United States, on Amazon right now, they're running a big discount on the Hip Hop Family Tree Omnibus, almost 25% off. So if you were thinking about getting it as a gift, and that person that you're buying for is worth $50, then scoop up the Hip Hop Family Tree Omnibus right at this minute. It's a limited time thing, I guess, as per the website. We don't know how that kind of thing works. We have no control over that. But I have some suspicions. I think that when the resellers or people who run shops, they get their discounts, and then I think they open up their Amazon store, they undermine the typical price that Amazon is charging, and then it triggers something in Amazon to kind of compete. That's just my guess. So with that in mind, that could be a hack. That could be a way to hack Amazon if that is the case. The inking tools for this strip are Copic markers and a various amount of sizes. The boldest lines are the 1.0. Second boldest, though it starts to get pretty fat, is the 0.8. And then we go with the 0.5 for the details. And when you have a far-off face that needs a little bit more detail, that's the 0.3. And then little goofy shits like speed lines. And when I do that manga-style speed line, where the entire background is lines, that'd usually be a 0.1. So we play with a bunch of different sizes. The thought initially was to try to go clear line and do a lot of the work in color in terms of modeling, but I got a little skittish. I just didn't know how long color would take me. But this coming week, it's very possible that I could have a deal in place with Switchblade shorties. I'm not going to count the chickens, but if I do, and if there's a format attached to that, I'll feel more comfortable about doing some color, and the color will be markers and color pencils, because I'll know the exact size that the work will be printed in whenever I have that format locked down. And then I could color two sides or maybe just a little bit bigger rather than the full 11 by 17, because that would just be a little more time consuming than I'm eager to spend on the color portion of creating these comics. So first 100 pages, 120 pages will be, we'll call it monochromatic, because if you're following my Patreon, I'm using different color papers and different color inks, quote unquote, using Photoshop to make that happen, to just add some variety, kind of that Shonen Jump style thing. So what we have at the top tier here is news footage. The Copics feel better on the paper than Microns. Microns have that stiff nib. And these nibs feel like a hot knife through butter. And a big part of the gig is tactility for me. That's one of the reasons why I don't play around with digital for my final pieces at all, and probably never will, because the tactility. I like this feeling of the nibs hitting the paper and watching the ink dry. When I use the dip pen, there's a smell to the ink. It encompasses all the senses. It's not merely about getting print-worthy images together. We'll leave that to everybody else. And also, I like to have something tangible to show for my day. It's a nice thing to have a piece of paper that started off white in the morning and then is a complete moment by the end of the day. There's something to that I really dig. So inside these stripes will be typography for the news broadcast. I'll just do that in Photoshop. But I have to thank you guys, the Kayfabe audience, really for making the Hip Hop Family Tree Omnibus competitive, and giving Uncle Dan Clowes a run for his money a little bit, man. We're the Hip Hop Family Tree Omnibus is 300. It's the Spartans, and when it comes to the promotional machine that Fanta has, they're saving it all for Clowes, man. He's getting the New Yorker, and he's getting this and that. So Cartoonist Kayfabe is nothing to sneeze at. So I thank you guys for showing up and selling a heck of these, a bunch of these comics. That said, big discounts right now, so don't feel any kind of buyer's remorse if you grabbed it at slightly regular price. Think about this as just now it's gift giving time. Now you could get a real cheap copy for a loved one that you might not have been able to afford. even yesterday. So, I want to make a statement with the book. I want to sell that thing the hell out as quick as possible, just to see what the power of the kayfabe audience can wield, man. We kayfabe affect books all the time, so it's time to put the army to work for us, man, and kayfabe affect my own stuff, if you don't mind. If you dig the channel, if you dig the stuff that we've been presenting to you, support the channel in that way. What we got going on in this panel is going to be a bunch of cameras, like a silhouette of a bunch of news cameras. To kind of frame our subjects, which are the parents of a missing child. So we're kind of kayfabing that stuff. It is cartooning. James Easterly, thank you so much, man, for supporting Hip Hop Family Tree Omnibus. Just kind of bouncing all over the page here, because this is a sort of relaxed spot, man. We'll kind of get the wrist warmed up. I also like the idea of putting the big black areas in here, because I already just did that before, putting up the camera with the TV screens up top. So it'll be a way to monitor the balance of the black areas on the page, make sure that they're equally distributed. Finished watching Sopranos yesterday. What happens is, I get up in the morning, I write a page, I rough it out, I print it up in blue, and then what you're seeing me work on is the page that I wrote yesterday and roughed out earlier. Roughed out yesterday morning. And then so while I'm doing that, I'll just like have some shit on in the background, but nothing too engaging in as much as I've never seen it before. So put on the tried and trues if I want to hear a human voice while I'm working. And now I got the Wire running again. That's a show that I'll watch once a year, just have on as background music. But what's funny is, putting in the work days that I do, you could really polish the entire series off in a work week if it's just kind of on constant rotation. So I'm already up to episode 4 or 5 of the first season, and it's kind of funny how they're off to the races pretty quick. Already they played the scenes with explaining chess. There was the fuck scene with Bunk and McNulty. I'm gonna do a little penciling. What's going to happen here is the girl is watching the broadcast television, broadcast news. She's supposed to be bougie, and one place where I'm at a tremendous disadvantage is I never stepped foot into the house of any ritzy people in the 90s, so I have no idea how to adorn the living room. I don't know how the TVs were set up, what kind of special way that would have been done, because what I do know is that everybody, the fanciest people, they know how to hide the wires, man. They know how to hide this stuff, so I'm not really... I can't conceptualize it, but I do imagine that I feel like everybody who thought that they were ballers back then, man, they would have like a projection TV, those real big joints that you had to sit directly in front of, because if you were on the sides it would turn all dark. The novelty of the size was always cool, but then it's like, hey man, you can't even really watch this shit if you ain't sitting right up on it. And who would be the people that would get to sit right up on it, right? It would be like the man of the house with his big old lazy boy. Put some flowers here. I feel like bougie folks would have some plant life. And then I imagine this will be, so make that black. Make this black. Make this black. Maybe make this, maybe all this shit black. And then just frame our girl. It's my trusty eraser. One of the running gags, I guess you could call it, is that nobody understands why this girl hangs out with the poor girls. They all look at each other as sisters and stuff and don't think about that kind of shit. And I think that's how kids rule, man. They don't have any kind of weird prejudices or keeping up with the Joneses kind of shit. I remember this one time when we moved away to Baltimore for a year. My dad got some work out there, and it was an apartment complex that we moved to, and it was the first time I saw Asian people ever. Like, the neighborhood I grew up in, it's all black and white, not even Latinos or anything like this, man. So it was the first time I saw Asian people and some kids my age. And we get to Baltimore right after the school year, after second grade. So we begin third grade when I'm living in Baltimore. And we're playing with these kids, man, all summer. These two brothers, Korean dudes. And we have a ball. You know, it's G.I. Joe era. The Ninja Turtles didn't get too whack yet. You know, it was like Mondo Gecko and PandaCon and like that era. The G.I. Joes were the got to get tough era Joes with the Darth Vader, Cobra Commander, and guys like Salvo and that era, Metalhead, the Eco Warriors. So we're playing all summer. And then there's one brother who's in my grade, and then there was a brother who was 1 year older in fourth. And we all had to catch the school bus. And it's time to get on the school bus at the end of day one. And I see the older brother, and he's fucking crying so bad. And, you know, I was feeling for him, man. What the heck is wrong, dude? Why are you crying so much? And then somebody explained that he was sad because he didn't know English. And I was playing with this dude for 3 months. And we're playing action figures and stuff for 3 months. And never realized that we weren't talking. Or maybe I was just talking. I'll never forget that, man. Played together a whole summer. Still setting things up a little bit with the strip. So we're doing some news broadcast stuff. Talking about the boys that got mauled. Presumably by pit bulls is the word. And then the father saying that, he encountered the dogs himself at one point. And is sad that he didn't do something about them. It was kind of interesting with Red Room doing media exposition stuff because it's so different than what we're used to from old comics, which is this kind of thing, the TV screens. Who watches TV any longer? You guys are kicking it on the tubes with me right at this minute. So you had to think what are the distribution mechanisms? It would be TMZ and certainly online, Twitter, and I used it all in Red Room. But this is a 90s story. Whenever I make a mistake, I have to immediately write it out because I feel like I'll run the risk of forgetting. But you may also notice I don't get hyper about it when I fuck up neither. And that's something that was kind of instilled in my mind at art school, where the big wheelies out there, man, like Joe himself, he said the difference between a professional and an amateur is how you handle your mistakes. And the pro just doesn't get rattled. And whether that's true or not, I've made it true for myself. Certainly was not always that way. If we took a tour of Mom's house and you saw my little drawing room, you would see little dabs of ink blotted on the wall whenever stuff like my rapidograph wasn't cooperating the way I wanted it to and shit. Was an emotional young lad. Try to try not to try to save the bold lines for the characters. So I'm debating with this. I'm gonna come back to it. Like the little guy sitting at a piano, and the thought is, do I ink that with the same bold line? I'm thinking no. I'm leaning towards no, so I'll meditate on it for a minute. This little guy I'm drawing right here, he's the MacGuffin. Like if you got Red Room Crypto Killers issue 3 with the backup feature, you know the deal with this little fella. He's the MacGuffin. He's the reason why my little shorties go on adventures and have shit happen. And it's inspired by many things. One of the thoughts in my mind was Spooky Mulder from X-Files. The fact that his pursuit of the X-Files was inspired by, his missing sister, who he believes was abducted by aliens. It's inspired by, some very scary things from that period. Growing up in that era, this is when America's Most Wanted and John Walsh is gaining popularity, and we know what happened to his son, and that was huge. That was huge online. What am I talking about? That was huge in the media, and there were all kinds of campaigns and stuff. So the idea of a missing kid is, kids don't have too much to be nervous about, really, at the end of the day. Like, I remember it's like, what if my parents get divorced? Which they never fought. It was just one of those thoughts in the mind, But like, oh, that would be so devastating if that were to happen. Kidnapping fears were put into our heads. So that's another inspiration for this little guy. There's also like so much kind of victim, what you guys call victim blaming nowadays, where it was definitely the parents' fault and blah, blah, blah. Like you would hear all that kind of rhetoric in the neighborhood. I don't want to get too deep into it, but there was like a reasonably famous story in the 90s, missing girl in my neighborhood, and it was a part of many of the talk shows, and it turned out that the girl, mental problems really, and she split from the house and like literally was hiding out in like this same neighborhood, 5 blocks away, living with some like elderly Alzheimer's lady, and convincing her that she was the daughter or something. And I remember it was, I believe, the family, including like the one brother, like the brother was in my grade. And raise your hands if you guys had Channel 1 News at your high school or middle school. But we did. That's where Anderson Cooper got his start. And so we had, if you have Channel 1 News, like there's TVs connected in every single homeroom. And we were in language arts class, English. And somebody kicked on the TV, and it was Montel. And it was an episode where the dude who was sitting, 3 desks away from me and his family were on fucking Montel, showing like the crazy things they have to do to just kind of keep tabs on the girl. She was older than us, but she was just always bouncing. And she was away for a good chunk of time. But that's one of those core memories that I had. Being like reasonably creative, I just had all kinds of ideas about what she must have been up to, because there was never a danger, like nobody felt like she was, something nefarious happened. But I would always wonder, like, man, how does she get money? Shit like that. We'll give Mom that 1990s poodle hair. Just checking them. I would say this is more 80s. My mom had this exact kind of perm when I was a little boy. It's crazy to think, man. Like, I knew my mom when she was like 23. So hard to believe. Because also, like, I know myself at 23. I know myself at 33. I ain't know anything, man. And if she didn't know anything, she at least faked it really, really well. Had to call a little audible there because I saw that chin was going to turn into a tangent. So that's the kind of stuff that you always have to kind of be mindful of. And I say that probably not seeing the 10 tangents that might already be on this page, but what can you do? All that we do is our best. I certainly would not leave any tangents there if I notice them. And I do think that if I go back and like look at these pages that I ink on the streams, and with a critical eye, if I think that it would have been done better privately, then I'll just have to go back and, quit streaming. But as of right now, I don't think that the inked pages would look much differently if I was just kind of keeping to myself. How to describe a tangent? Yeah, sometimes overlapping lines, or lines that intersect and create a miscommunication. For instance, say I had bleachers behind this guy, and the bleachers were off in the distance, and I had characters standing on the bleachers because it's a big moment. If I have one of those characters standing on a bleacher right here, now this dude has a little sprite, that has Ant-Man chilling on his shoulder. So it's not exactly an intersecting line, but it's just, I don't know, man. I don't know what the dictionary definition of a tangent is, but you certainly know it when you see it. And when you have them, you run the risk of just confusing the reader, and that is not what you want to do when you're making comics. So you got to be mindful of that stuff. There's also kind of tangents where you just do certain things for clarity. Like we got our guy here who's going to be playing the piano. It's probably more natural to have the hands, like if we were to look at somebody piano playing, maybe this hand is covering this hand a little bit, but you have to cheat it in drawing for clarity's sake. Or put it this way, I have to cheat it while drawing. I'm sure Brian Bolland doesn't have to, but Brian Bolland's a unicorn. But TX, man, if you draw and make art, like that's definitely something that you wanna acquaint yourself with. And maybe that'll be a good episode, because tangents can be funny. And there could even be tangents between panels. Like there's this one Akira panel. It's a page in Akira where it shows a guy running, it shows running legs, it shows some arms or something, but like when you look at the image with the two panels, it looks like a swastika with a head, but it's because it's like arms and legs, going at 90-degree angles, and it's such an odd, because it's just head, arms, legs, so not even like a trunk or say thighs. That's one that sticks in my brain, because every time it's like once you see it, you can't unsee it. It's a pretty fascinating thing to play with too, because the fine line of a masterfully designed page with gimmicks and unique mechanics, there's a fine line between that kind of a page. I think specifically of like some of the Bernie Krigstein stuff, and just tangents. It's use at your own risk kind of shit that we could show off. We showed off some of those pieces in episodes showing off the EC artist editions. Because this is so close to the foreground, I'm gonna use my bold. And the more I think about it, man, there's gonna be a lot of black here. Kayfabe in the AV cables a bit. The red, yellow, and white joints. Then on this side will be like the coaxial cables. See, we have a tangent that's going to show up there if I don't ink it right. And it'll be the top of the couch and the top of this VCR, so we're going to have to push some things. Let me do a little Google on the back of the VCR. Let me see what some of the bullshit is on there. Still trying to be mindful of that thing of like no right angles, no sharp squares and stuff. Keep a little bounce, keep a little curve in everything as much as possible. Like I didn't do it so well right there. And it's just to keep everything a little interesting, a little fun. It's fun not being bound by the perspective grids and rulers and T-squares. I allowed that in my work for 20 years. So let's do something a little differently. In my mind, I'm mapping out the black areas in this whole thing, like this whole back, because like this side of the TV will not be black, but it may be this side, which would be like, there'd be some kind of fan thing here, and it may be like a little warning label. This would be black, this would be black. Jury's out on these. Man, I'm really thinking black, fuck it. This will be black, this will be black. This will probably be black, but not the wires. No, I didn't see any negative reviews on Dan Clow's book, and something tells me that in their heart of hearts, what they were hoping for is exactly what you just did right there, man, by promoting it. And I bet that they don't quite believe that. It's hard for me to believe. And, you know, I don't know who that is. But something tells me they also probably don't have much skin in the game. So you got to consider your sources. There's a lot of money to be made in hot takes and saying controversial things. Certainly easy way to get some eyeballs. So have some critical thinking. Question what might be behind statements like that, and you'll do all right. This will be black. Make this some kind of hutch or something. For my speech balloons, I'm doing something a little different with this strip, where it's these kind of pill-shaped bubbles. Previously, I would just kind of use these ellipse templates, but you could see that that doesn't quite correspond with these guys. So what I do is I'm using circles, and you could see exactly where the half of the circle is. So I set one of these lines at the sort of base, set another line, you know, off the grid, or, you know, at the top of the bubble. And so then I ink just to the grid, to the red indicator, and then with a straight edge, hit that. The part that and be mindful if you guys are doing this, because so many of the comics that we get sent do this shit, and it's just aesthetically ugly, and you want to change that, is when you do your little computer lettering and you have those straight tails, that it's just like a triangle to the people's mouths. You want some curve in that. You want some bounce. Like, sharp lines are fucking boring. So don't be boring. That's like one of the major rules of creativity. So I just use these ellipse templates for the tails. Also, you want to be mindful of just giving your words a lot of air around the bubbles. That's another big mistake that I see a lot of people do. And then I got this one wrong. So in Photoshop, when the time comes and I turn this artwork into pixels, I'm going to nudge. You know, maybe I'll even give myself a little indicator like that. I'm going to nudge this word and center it up more. Probably this one too. I'll nudge it down there. You get a lot of freedom once you turn the art into pixels, that's for sure. But just a couple little things to keep in mind when you're lettering. Lettering is not to be taken lightly, and I think that so many people just take it for granted as just like whatever. But I mean, these are the words that the people are reading, so you need to present them properly. I'm just pulling up the chat room so that it is kind of under me. So that I could kind of keep looking down. Well, that ain't gonna happen. Let's see. 1 second. Oh, okay, cool. Boom. Yeah, man, Dave Sim, one of the most fantastic letterers in all of comics. Amongst other things, man, that guy had a lot of tools that he did exceptionally well. As it should have been. You know, if you're doing 6,000 pages, you better start figuring some stuff out. Imagine that this ain't getting hit with any light. because I'm going pretty much just black and white with no bells and whistles, I do want to make sure that I have good uses of black in every panel to just break up the shapes. It's really the first comic that I'll be putting out there that doesn't have much bells and whistles. The first 5 strips have Zipatone, but I abandoned that when I got back from Japan because I just felt like doing most of the work on the page. But part of that thinking too is, and when I do more color, it'll be even more apparent. But these are little kid characters, and I wanted to use implements that like you would have access to as a kid. Like I had markers, I had micron pens. I'm going to hit that with white. When I would get micron pens, I would have to make them bitches last. My parents weren't very quick to get me a whole bunch. It would be like, that multi-pack. And then you have your one favorite one, the 0.3 or the 0.5. Then you use that up over the course of a week. And then maybe next month you get another pack. A lot of black in the foregrounds here to kind of frame our main focal point, which will be the girl. She's seeing her pops, the mayor, on the news, giving no comments, and she's just commenting how handsome he looks, kind of oblivious that it's not a nice thing that he's on the TV for. Nah, no interest in collaborators when it comes to comics. Like, I'm very happy to allow my work to stand or fall on my own. Because you certainly run the risk of having some kind of fucking hack screw up your labor. And that would just be heartbreaking. I did some work in animation, and that really turned me off on collaboration because I just knew what I would do if I did all these important pieces, and it was just not possible. And seeing what was done in the wake of my contributions completely turned me off to artistic collaboration. And comics is so hard to fucking do just because of the time involved, literally sacrificing my life for this medium and for my projects and for my work and stuff. So I just cannot have some hack writer fuck something up. I cannot have some inker going into business for themselves. Might look a little goofy right now, man, but when we start to add value on these pieces, it'll it'll all make sense. I can kind of conceptualize it in my mind right now. David Simon's funny as hell, man. And give him that little Bones Brigade skater haircut that all the boys had. I'd like to have these wobbly lines just kind of show the hand. I think that's going to be more and more important in this AI-driven universe. You know, I'm really playing for the artisanal. We'll make him the Bubby Brister 06. Yeah, William, I don't know where you're from, but I've seen some punk ass pit bulls in my day. Plenty of them. I had this one friend who, where he lived, real sketchy area, a lot of gangs and stuff. And there was this abandoned house across the street from where he lived. And they would do dog fights. And these neighborhoods, man, like, the dudes who were participating in that stuff had, family members on the force and shit like this. So they got hip to a kind of a sting that was going to go down. And they just burnt down the whole house with a bunch of pups and shit inside. Crazy shit. And then you'll say, don't blame the breed, blah, blah, blah. And there's this girl that I worked with at the call center when I was a kid. She was exactly that type. Don't blame the breed, blah, blah, blah. She had 8 big-ass pit bulls, and they were pretty nice. But something happened, and she got her face mangled. I'm sure she still loved them and all that stuff, man, but shit happens. This is going to be one of those parts where I'm just letting my ignorance flow with these piano keys. And then you guys who know how to play piano will be like, dude, you got it all wrong. But I'm going to have to live with that. It's such a small piece that you don't have to get it totally right. You see that little boy that got those big ass eyebrows? He's got those the dude from Art School Confidential eyebrows. And of course, these guys were shit heel bullies to our girls, but now that they're toast and on the news, they use all the best imagery available to sell them as little angels to the public. There will be some kind of background. I have the perspective grid here. I'm thinking some kind of bleachers, but that's the kind of stuff that I really need to concentrate on and need to kind of keep to myself and be quiet. This little bow tie Alex P. Keaton fucking schmuck. The thoughts are that this part of the mushroom is kind of an underplane, so that more light hits up there, and we'll smooth it out once we get a basic plane established. Yeah, we'll do some middle part shits too, to really figure out where the light is hitting. This little Poindexter nerdy fuck. I kind of always give this kid a blank stare, and I do think of that cover to the first issue of Young Magazine that has Akira. You know, that blue portrait. It's very ominous, and I think the way that it works is that even Otomo wasn't sure if that's like Kaneda or Akira on the cover, and he just looks, it's creepy. And I want this little guy to have a little bit of a dead gaze. He's the Laura Palmer of the comic, which is, you know, once again another inspiration for having this character as a MacGuffin. I'm just thinking, like, what kind of a background to give him. Maybe just hatching. I think I'm going to give Mom some Mirage Studio April O'Neil hair. I'm going to use a micron that I don't mind beating up a little bit for that. So with this, I kind of like to establish almost a version of, you know, find the darkest center and then feather it out. Give her that kind of wet Jerry curl kind of activator hair. You might be looking at this like, oh man, that's some bullshit. You fucked up. But I promise it'll be fine. It'll be good. I'm using a pen that I just don't mind banging on, and doesn't need to be a lot of integrity to the line, because it's really just texture, you know. And then on the closest parts I'll make it even darker. Goes Mom Dukes' hair. Not the right eyebrows for a dude who's honking into a Kleenex. I really like the David Lynch comic in relation to his entire body of work as being just a adventurous, artistic spirit, but you'll be very disappointed in the comic, probably, as just a you know, as its own thing. That single image. deal. And Pops here is super active with his Kleenex. His little kerchief or whatever. Pops with that comb over. We got another one of Mama's hairs. With this kind of approach, it's okay for 2 panels on one random strip, but if she was an established regular character, I would have to think of something maybe a little bit faster, because this will take minutes, which may not seem like much in the scheme of things, but I promise you exactly in the scheme of things it is a lot. You know, if I had to draw her 5-6 times a page, every page, that shit adds up. I would have to do something different. You probably hear in that shake, that's the Copic markers on the table. Many apologies. Now I have the perspective grids in blue here, so I could see where the lines fall, and I'll be able to hatch with them to kind of continue to sell the illusion of 3D for some of these objects, like this television set. I'm going to allow this entire piece to be in gray. Alright, so now it's time to, well, let me just add some fuss. It's real fascinating to me, and you see it in a lot of comics where black, it becomes a placeholder color depending on what else you add to it. So this is dark green, and it's just these little kayfabe flowers that let you know that this black is not this black, or this black is not this black. And probably this black is not this black, because this would be like a dark brown or something. William, thank you so much for the props on the Hip Hop Family Tree Omnibus, and I just have to thank you guys for supporting the comic the way that you have been. Something got triggered off on Amazon right now, man, and it's nearly 25% off, which is, you know, significant money. So I definitely appreciate you guys showing up for that. There we go. See, had to extend that to just not have a tangent, but then right here, if I am being lazy, there's a tangent with the foot in this line right here. So, you know, gotta be mindful of that stuff. Cool. Well, we got about an hour and a half in, and put some significant mark making down on the page so far. So I think I might take a little break, stretch the legs, get a little something to drink, tend to my chili that's in the slow cooker, and just kind of get back to business on my own, man. Put the wire back on, right? But before I split, I definitely just got to thank you guys once again, man. Let me put a little link in. Scoop up that Hip Hop Family Tree Omnibus right away while it's still cheap on Amazon if you're in the US. I'm keeping the comic competitive with Uncle Dan, Clowes, and Monica, which is fun. Which is super fun to see, because Fantagraphics is pulling out all the stops for Uncle Dan, as they should. You know, it's a masterful comic, but you know your boy Eddie P ain't gonna just sit there and leave it up to the fates to decide what happens with the comic. So I need you guys to support it. If you guys have been digging the channel, if you guys have been digging the work that we've been doing here on Kayfabe, man, scoop up the Hip Hop Family Tree Omnibus, gift it to a friend or a loved one who is a lover of rap music, and without further ado, I'm going to split. So take care, have a good night, read more comics, draw more comics,